this is Mike with Christian Meds. Today we're going to start breaking down what the occult is and isn't. So let's get started. It was kind of interesting when I first started breaking down the occult. What I've been doing is there's a book by Derek Prince named Curses and Blessings, and so I'm working my way through that book. It's not the first book I've read or the first-hand experience I've had with spiritual warfare in the first place. I had lots of spiritual warfare situations in my first marriage, and I've covered some of that in this channel. But the big thing when it comes down to kind of figuring out where I need to take this channel and just kind of the education for my own head and for anybody who, is interested in kind of exploring what the occult is and what the occult isn't, when it really comes to Christianity, most people treat things either for Christ or against Christ. They make it into a two-sided coin. Well, it's pretty interesting when it comes to the way Jesus presented it, because the way Jesus put it, it was very interesting. First off, he talked about that you can't have two masters. So you can't have a master that is the triune God of Father, Son, and Spirit, and have the master of the devil. In other words, they both can't be your master, only one can. And if you're listening to one, then you're not listening to the other. That's, pretty much a flip of a coin. You basically end up either being on one side of the coin or the other. Now, the interesting part of the way Jesus also put it is he also put it that whatever was not against him was of him. So sometimes Christians have put things in a box, in my opinion. Sometimes certain things are, I think eventually get proven by science, and those things end up making Christianity look very bad. In other words, at one point, Christians believed the world was flat, and they used scripture to back that up. And when Galileo basically was saying, no, this is wrong, that he believed that the world was not flat, the world was round, just like the moon. And he had studied eclipses and things like that, and he thought he had, scientifically proven that the world was not flat. And the church treated him horribly, So there's lots of things, I think, out there in society today that we have classified as part of the occult that I truly don't think is part of the occult. And I think anything that's not against Christ and is true and can be proved scientifically should be treated in a different classification than the occult. In other words, things can have cause and effect due to science and not due to supernatural powers, not due to demonic influences. Now, demonic influences are real, and this is part of what I'm going to end up breaking down in this series, is basically when it comes to the occult, there's pretty much three branches, the way Derek Prince breaks it down, and I'm going to go through each of these branches, and I'm going to end up looking at each thing that he puts in each branch and just basically give my thoughts, so I'm going to basically break it down and see where we end up. I haven't completely thought this through at this point, but I'm basically in chapter 8 of his book out of 24 chapters, so I'm about 1/3 of the way through it. Chapter 6 is when he actually gives a list of what the occult is according to his definition. So basically, he breaks it down into three branches. He breaks it down into a power branch, a knowledge branch, and a physical branch. In other words, he's saying that there's certain things that you're tapping into a power. There's certain things that you're tapping into knowledge. In other words, things like astrology, things like that, where you're trying to predict the future through these knowledge things. And then the third thing is physical objects like amulets and things like that. So that's kind of the way he starts his breakdown, and he basically gives a whole list of each thing. I'm going to end up taking on probably 3 to 5 per week until I get through all of them and see kind of where we end up at the end of that. And then the next kind of part he kind of goes into is he kind of goes into false religions. What makes something a false religion? Now, the big thing with Christianity in general is the big difference between Christianity and every other religion of the world. I've talked about this previously on this channel, is God's grace. We always need to understand that you can't group different religions together and say that because they started with the same God, you know, like Islam and Judaism and Christianity, they all started with the same God, but where we ended up were 3 completely different places, and the only one out of those 3 that has grace, and not that you need to chase your tail to become in right standing, that you just need to trust in the blood and what Jesus did on the cross as a sacrifice for you. And that is so different than trying to live up to a particular standard to become in right standing with God. So this is where we're starting. We'll see where we end up, and just have a very blessed week.